Hello everyone, and welcome to the InStyle Knitting Studio. Today I am inviting you to knit a cool jumper using garter stitch. One I knitted for my daughter. One for myself, so to speak, in the family style. It is very simple to knit. Garter stitch from the bottom up. The back is elongated here. I will explain how to create the elongation. We knit in the round from the bottom up to the underarm area. Then we switch to flat knitting. After that, we knit up to the shoulders. We create a seam here. Then we simply integrate. Cast on stitches and start to add the sleeve. We finish the neckline. We close the sleeves and that's it. In principle, everything here is simple. There are no decreases for the armholes here. That is, we simply knit straight from the bottom up. The only question that might arise here is with knitting the heart. The most important thing is to create a schematic. And how to knit it. Here's INTARSIA and the round and flat INTARSIA. I explain all this very in detail. So you can knit without any problems. If you like these models, then let's get started. For knitting, we will need yarn in two colors. A 3mm needle with a cable and a 4mm needle on a long cable. I have a very long cable, 11 inches including the needles. But a little shorter is also fine. A hook of a similar size to the needles will be needed. A needle with a blunt end, a marker to indicate the start of the row. Scissors, a measuring tape, a row counter. It is not necessary to have a notebook and pen for calculations and a calculator. We will also need an A4 sheet, graph paper, some contrasting thread, and a simple pencil to draw the diagrams. First we will make all the necessary calculations. Then we will start knitting. So, we measure the circumference of the chest. I will knit for a circumference of 92 centimeters. Next, we will knit two samples. One sample in stockinette stitch with a size 4 needle, and the other in a 2x2 ribbing with a size 3.5 needle. After that, we calculate the knitting density in each sample. As usual, I create a proportion. For instance, my sample had 44 stitches, and I measured it with a tape measure. This is about 22 centimeters. We create a proportion. Centimeters are written in centimeters, stitches under stitches. That is, we find out how many stitches are in 1 centimeter. By using the proportion method, I calculated that I would have 2 stitches in 1 centimeter. Here as well, similarly for height. So, we measure our knitting density in one sample and in the other sample. More detail on how to measure your knitting density and calculate how many stitches to cast on is covered in my lesson. Here is a link above. You can click and take a look. After we calculated how many stitches and rows we have in 1 centimeter in both samples, we will further calculate how many stitches to cast on. We will knit the jumper from the bottom up, in the round. So the bottom will be in a 2x2 ribbing. This means we will start knitting with ribbing. Therefore, I take the chest circumference of 92 centimeters. I multiply by the number of stitches in 1 centimeter of the 2x2 ribbing, and get the result. I rounded it down. It came out to 200 stitches, which is the number of stitches I will initially cast on. Next, I will knit in a 2x2 ribbing. This number must be a multiple of 4 since we are knitting a 2x2 ribbing. If you are using a 1x1 ribbing, then this number must be a multiple of 2. We all calculated that initially, I will cast on 200 stitches. And will knit in a rib pattern of 2x2. After that, I will switch to stockinette stitch. How many stitches do I need? For the width of my sweater, so, I take the measurement of my bust circumference and multiply it by the number of stitches per centimeter of stockinette stitch. It comes out to 184 stitches, which means after knitting the ribbing, there will be 200 stitches. I will switch to stockinette stitch, and I need to end up with 184 stitches. That means I need to decrease my stitches. So, we subtract the total number of ribbing stitches from the total number of stockinette stitches and get 16 stitches. That means we need to decrease 16 stitches. After knitting the ribbing to switch to stockinette stitch, after that, I take the total initial number, which is 200, and divide it by the number of decreases. It results in this number. We take the whole part of this number, 12 stitches, and multiply it by the number of decreases, 16. It comes out to 192 stitches. After that, we will make this scheme. We take the whole part of this number, 12, we subtract 2. Always subtract 2. So, 12 minus 2 equals 10. We write in parentheses 10 knit stitches, which we will knit a comma. After that, we will knit the decrease. Making a decrease starts with 2 stitches. 10 plus 2 equals 12 stitches in parentheses. 12 stitches just like here. The whole number before the comma. Then our parentheses after that, so we will multiply. Repeating 16 times since we need to make 16 decreases. That's how we wrote it down. Now we can even calculate. 12 stitches in parentheses multiplied by 16 repetitions. It comes out to 192 stitches. But since we have 192 stitches here, when we initially had 200 stitches, so what we need to do is to revise this diagram, since it turned out to be slightly incorrect. How we will redo it is by subtracting the number we obtained from the total number of stitches, 200, and we get 8 stitches. That is, 8 decreases is the number of decreases we need to take away from this diagram. We take 16 decreases from these repetitions. Here are our 16 repetitions. We subtract the number obtained decreases and get 8. Thus, instead of 16, we will now have 8. Rewriting this diagram. Here, instead of 16, we write 8, and it results in not 192 stitches, but 96 stitches. Next, we subtract this from the total number of stitches. This number, we no longer need this diagram. We subtract 96 and get 104 stitches. That is, to this diagram, we need to add another diagram, so that there are a total of 104 stitches. What do? 104 stitches divided by the number of decreases that we have left. These are not used. We subtracted them from the total earlier. Thus, we divide by 8 decreases and get 13 stitches. And we create a diagram. 13 stitches subtract 2. Just as here, we get 11. We write down 11 knit stitches. Next is the decrease. That is, the decreases are 2 stitches initially before we decrease. Therefore, 11 plus 2 will be 13. Thus, in parentheses, we have 13, and we repeat 8 times. So 13 times 8 equals 104. That's correct. So here are 104 stitches. That is, we need to connect these 2 diagrams, and we will get what we need. So, we write down this diagram. We repeat 8 times, and next we repeat the following diagram 8 times as well. I have achieved the same number of repetitions here. Yours may be different. By repeating all this, we would have 200 stitches. Here, 96 stitches plus 104 will make 200. But I will slightly modify this scheme. I will only write down the brackets. Here are 10 knit decreases. Next, the following bracket, 11 knit decreases. And I will take it all in large brackets and repeat it 8 times. Since I have the same number of repetitions here, I will first knit one bracket, then the second, and repeat all of this again. I should have 8 such repetitions. This is my main scheme, which I will use for decreases and to knit the next row. So, how will we check it? First, let's check the number of stitches we will have before the decreases. Before the decreases, we should have 200 stitches. How do we count this? 10 plus 2, since we will have 2 stitches before the decreases. Thus, adding 12, 11 plus 2 stitches. 13, 12 plus 13, and we repeat this all 8 times. So, adding and multiplying by 8, we get 200 stitches, all correct. Just as we had initially, the same amount. Now let's check what we will have after the decreases. So, after the decreases, instead of 2 stitches, we will have 1. Thus, 10 plus 1 will be 11. 11 plus 1 stitch will be 12. Adding the brackets and multiplying by 8, gives 184 stitches. The same number we need to achieve to knit stockinette. By checking this way, we got the right number of stitches in our scheme, the same as we had here in the calculations. Therefore, we can confidently knit the next row, making decreases according to this scheme. If you have questions, ask in the comments. But before we make decreases and switch to stockinette stitch, we will make some calculations to incorporate the lengthening. So, we decide how many centimeters the lengthening will be. That is, how many centimeters the back will be longer than the front. For me, this will be about 9 centimeters. We take 9 centimeters, multiply it by the number of rows in 1 centimeter. We have calculated this already. Since we will be knitting the lengthening in stockinette stitch, we take the results for stockinette. So, 2 and 8 in 1 centimeter. So we multiply 9 centimeters by 2.8 rows, and we get this number, which I have slightly decreased. I rounded it. Since this number needs to be even, I wrote down 24 rows. Thus, to achieve a lengthening of 9 centimeters, we need to knit 24 rows. I have schematically shown my knitting. So, this is the front, this is the back. I'll divide my total number of stitches by 2, I get 92 stitches. I write down 92 stitches for the front and 92 stitches for the back. Then I will divide the back into 3 equal parts. They do not divide evenly, resulting in 31 stitches, 31 and 30. I do not like this. I want an equal number of stitches in the 3 parts of the back. So, I redrew and wrote here 30 stitches each. I took a smaller number of stitches, yes, and wrote 30. So, 30 multiplied by 3 gives 90. Thus, the back will now have not 92 stitches, but 90. Then, from the total, I subtract the back, and I get 94 stitches, which I allocate to the front. Since this is a women's model, it's perfectly fine that the front has slightly more stitches than the back. Next, I simply drew the back, we leave the front, which will take 94 stitches, and then we will figure out the back since we have the lengthening on the back. Yes, I redrew with 30 stitches. I have 3 parts on the back, and we will subtract the middle part. We subtract the middle part from the 90 stitches of the back. We do not consider it in our calculations. We get 60 stitches. 60 is divided into 2 parts of 30 stitches each. So, we have dealt with the stitches. Now we will deal with the rows. So, how are we going to incorporate this extension? We will incorporate it with turning rows. Like this. 1 right side row, then we will turn and incorporate on the wrong side row. Yes, we will incorporate with turning rows and continuously knit this middle part while gradually adding a few stitches, sometimes from one part and sometimes from the other. For instance, this is my start of incorporation. We will knit 1 row up to this point and add a few stitches from this part. We will turn, knit this middle part, and add a few stitches here. We will turn again, and add a bit more. That is, we will knit a few more stitches, turn, and knit a few more stitches again. We need to find out how many rows we need to knit to incorporate this part and that part. The differences will be the same since both parts have equal stitches. So, what am I doing? I take the total number of rows I need to knit to achieve this extension, yes, 24, and divide by 2 parts. We do not count the middle in the calculations. I get 12 rows. I write down 12 rows here, and 12 rows here. Thus, to incorporate our extension of 9 centimeters, we need to add 30 stitches on each side with turning rows, knitting, yes, and in total we will knit 12 rows here and 12 rows there. Here, we will knit 24 rows. That is, we will constantly be knitting the central part. It will be the longest for us. After that, we will consider one of the 2 parts. Let's take this one. Yes, I take 30 stitches, divide by 12 rows and get this number. 2.5 stitches. This number shows us that we will add 2 stitches, for instance. We have knitted the middle part and added 2 stitches here. We turned and added 3 stitches here. Let's assume that since we do not have a whole number here, 2 for example, but 2.5. Therefore, we will add either 2 stitches or 3 stitches. This is our number of stitches that we will add with each new row. Next, we will create a clear scheme by which we need to knit our extension. What am I doing? So, having received this number, I understand that in one row I will add 2 stitches. In the next row I will add more than 2, yes, 3 stitches. I write it down. Here's one row, I add 2 stitches. In the next row, I add 3 stitches. I wrote this down in parentheses and added them together. Yes, these are my total parentheses. This I will repeat. We do not know how many times. That is, we do not see the 6s here yet. Yes, now we will add the rows here. One row we will knit, and the second row. 1 plus 1 will be 2 rows. In one row we will add 2 stitches. In the second row we will add 3, 2 plus 3, 5. That is, after knitting 2 rows, we will add 5 stitches. Then we take 12 rows. Here we are considering one part. We take 12 rows and divide by the resulting 2 rows. We get 6 rows. The same goes for the stitches. 30 divided by 5 also gives 6 stitches. Well, I ended up with an even number of stitches here, but yours may be a little different. So, we take the minimum number before the decimal point, yes, and write it down here. That is, in order to knit 12 rows and add 30 stitches, I can only repeat these parentheses 6 times. Therefore, I write down 6 here, and we calculate 2 rows. We multiply by 6. That is, we repeat 6 times. We get 12 rows and 5 stitches. We repeat 6 times, obtaining 30 stitches. Here are 12 rows and 30 stitches. It works out for me. Everything is very good. For you, it may not match exactly. That is, you might be short on rows or stitches. Therefore, after obtaining this pattern, just add the missing rows and stitches. But we must not forget that this is only one part. We need to create extensions on both parts. Yes, the back. So we multiply this entire pattern by 2. First I will write down this bracket, where I will add 3 stitches. Since at the beginning, I want to add a few more stitches. Then I will add a bit less. Therefore, I will first write down this bracket and multiply by 2. Since I have 2 parts, and then I will add this bracket. I will also multiply by 2. We take all of this in large brackets and repeat 6 times. This is my algorithm for creating my extension. It can be checked, so we take the rows. 1 row, repeat it 2 times. That is, here 2 rows, and here 2 rows. 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 multiplied by 6 gives 24 rows. Then we count the stitches. 3 times 2 equals 6. 2 times 2 equals 4. 6 plus 4 equals 4. 6 plus 4 equals 10. 10 multiplied by 6 gives 60 stitches. This is our overall pattern, creating both parts. And we will have 24 rows, that is 24 and 60 stitches. 30 stitches for each. So, with the right needle, we pick up the first stitch we cast on. We move it to the right needle. Then, with the left needle, we lift the last cast on stitch over the first one that was moved. We tighten the threads. Now we have joined. And before we join, we of course check that our cast on twist is inside the cable. To ensure nothing twists anywhere there. If you want this twist to be on the front side while knitting, we will continue to knit in the round. If you want this twist to be inside, on the reverse side, you need to turn the work and start knitting back. I want the twist to be on the front side. Therefore, I do not turn the work and start knitting in a rib pattern of 2 by 2. I should have 200 stitches on my needles. That is why I said this number should be a multiple of 4. Since we will be knitting ribbing in 2 by 2, at the beginning of the row, we place a marker and start knitting the first row. We knit in a 2 by 2 rib, 2 knit stitches. We knit the knit stitches through the front loop always in circular knitting. Here are 2 knit stitches. Next, 2 purl stitches. I will be knitting the purl stitches the grandmother's way. Here are 2 purl stitches. Next, again 2 knit stitches through the front loop. 2 purl stitches also come through the front loop. In this row, we should have 200 stitches. I will knit and count at the same time. After we knit the first row and check the number of stitches, we move the marker and continue knitting in a 2 by 2 rib. It's easier here. It's already clear where the knit and where the purl stitch is. I will knit 15 rows. This is about 4.5 centimeters. So, knit the knit stitches through the front loop. And I will knit the purl stitches through the back loop. For the purl, starting from the second row onward, I will knit the purls through the back loop in the grandmother's style. In total, we should have 15 rows. For convenience, you can use a row counter. We have finished our ribbing. In the next rows, we will knit stitches, piecing them according to our scheme that we calculated. I will take larger needles right away. I have a size 4. Next, I will knit with a size 4. The marker can be temporarily removed. We will knit according to the pattern. So, according to the pattern, we knit the knit stitches through the front loop. Since we are knitting in the round 2 and the purl stitch comes next, we need to knit them as knit stitches. I will knit through the back loop as knit. We have already knitted 10 knit stitches on the new needle. Now we need to make a decrease. If we have 2 purl stitches, we simply knit them together. Through the back loop as knit. After this, we need to knit another 11 knit stitches and decrease again. We knit the knit stitches as knit through the front loop. We knit the purl stitch as knit through the back loop. We have knitted. Now we need to make a decrease. I have a purl and a knit stitch. Therefore, we temporarily move the purl stitch to the right needle. We turn the knit stitch and return the purl stitch to the left needle. Now we knit these 2 stitches together as knit through the back loop. We have repeated our large brackets once. We should have 8 such repetitions. We have knitted 1, now we repeat 7 more times. If we encounter 2 knit stitches and need to decrease, we knit the 2 knits through the front loop as knit. If we have a knit and a purl stitch and need to decrease, we turn the knit stitch and knit the knit and purl together as knit through the back loop. After we have knitted our row with decreases, we will correctly place the marker to knit the extension on the back. Here is my beginning of knitting, the start of the row. Here it is on the back. I marked it with a pink marker. Further, I have 30 stitches to the front. Here is my side marker. Next is the front, which is right here. Here is the translation. This is one of 3 parts. Next, the second of 3 parts and the third. By the way, we have already moved on to special number 4. Next, we will be knitting with them. Here is my beginning of the knitting. It is right here. In the first row, I will immediately add 3 stitches, that is, I will knit 3 stitches. In the extreme part of the back, the marker can be removed, it is no longer needed. Next, we knit 3 stitches, as this is ours. The front side, we knit with knit stitches. 1, 2, and we do not knit the third stitch, but will wrap it with the working yarn. Since this is our front side, the working yarn will be behind the work like this. And our third stitch will be wrapped. To start, we need to slip it as a knit onto the right needle. Then place the working yarn in front of the work and return this stitch like this to the left needle. Now the working yarn is right here. Now we turn the knitting clockwise. If we had a front row, we turn it to the purl side. This is our purl side. Here we'll be knitting purl stitches, so we place the working yarn in front of the work. This is our stitch that we wrapped. We do not knit it, we do not touch it, but just continue knitting purl stitches until our other marker. I knitted 32 purl stitches, plus 1 stitch that we wrapped. We knitted to our marker, we remove it. By the way, after turning the knitting, our new row starts. That is, right here we started knitting purl stitches. We started knitting the second row, we finished knitting to the marker, the second row needs to be repeated 2 times. That is, we have already knit 3 stitches once, but not yet a second time. Right now I will add 3 stitches again, so we are now right here and have knitted to this marker. I will also add 3 stitches here. This is our purl side, which means we knit purl 1, 2. The third stitch we do not knit, but we will wrap it. How? If we have the purl side facing us, we place the working yarn in front and slip our purl stitch as if we want to knit a purl stitch, this way. Then we move the working yarn behind the work and return the stitch to the left needle. If this is our purl row, we turn the knitting counterclockwise. We have turned it, and thus have already started our next row. Here is our knit side, so we will knit with knit stitches. Here is the stitch that we wrapped. We do not touch it, but simply continue knitting with knit stitches. I have knitted 34 knit stitches. By the way, I knitted them through the back loop, since we have a wrap now. 34 stitches and 35, which we wrapped. We have reached the stitch that we wrapped, and we need to knit it as a knit stitch, since we are on the knit row. How we knit it? We lift this yarn, which is closer to us, onto the left needle, and knit these 2 stitches together through the back loop. We have knitted the stitch that we wrapped. That's it. This is our third row, and in the third row, we have already added 3 stitches twice. Now we will add 2 stitches 2 times. So, I need to add 2 stitches after the stitch that we wrapped. 1, and we wrap the second stitch. Therefore, this is our knit row, meaning the yarn is behind the work. We slip it as a knit onto the right needle, place the yarn in front, and return the stitch to the left needle. That's it, and we turn the knitting. Since we are now on a knit row, we turn it clockwise. We have turned the knitting and continue to knit purl stitches until we reach the next stitch, the one we wrapped, purling through the front loop. We have knitted to the stitch that we wrapped. It stands out immediately. It is set apart from the others, and there is this yarn, it is clearly visible. The stitch that we wrapped is also noticeable right away, so here, we do not need to count the stitches we are knitting. We just knit from one stitch that we wrap to the opposite one. We have finished, and now we need to knit it as a purl, since we are on the purl side. If it is the purl side, we lift the yarn that is farther from us onto the left needle. It creates a double stitch here, and we knit them together as a purl through the front loop. We have knitted it. After we knitted it, our next row has started, right after we turned the knitting. Therefore, here we need to knit 2 extra stitches again. After we knitted the loop that we were wrapping, we knit 1 stitch, and the second one is not knitted as purl but wrapped. Since we are on the purl side, the working yarn is in front of the work. We move it back as we knit the purl stitch behind the work and return it. That's it. We are on the purl side, so we turn the knitting counterclockwise and start knitting the next row. This is the start of my row. I have made 1 repetition of 6, having knitted these large brackets. I need to repeat the same thing 5 more times that I have knitted. That is, I will add 3 stitches in one row, then add 3 stitches again in the next one, then add 2 stitches, and again 2 stitches in the following row. I won't demonstrate it anymore. If you have any questions left, I have a separate lesson on knitting extensions. It's all basically the same, just more detailed and a bit different calculations. If there are any questions, please follow the link above. And as I mentioned, all the links will be below the video. Therefore, I will make 5 more repetitions of my large brackets and meet you again. Well, I've done 6 repetitions, which means I have finished my extension. I ended up with 24 rows, just as we counted, and I reached my side markers, that is, our last row was purl, and I wrapped the last stitch before the marker. Here it is. It is. And after knitting my extension according to my algorithm, I switched to the knit row. Which means I turned the work and knitted up to this stitch and placed a yellow marker here. This is the start of my row. Now I will knit the first row in the round and take off the side markers. Here, I have knitted it. I have knitted to the beginning of my row. So, I have completed my first row in the round and removed the side markers. They are no longer needed. I left only one to see where my row start is. So, I have knitted the first row. I want to note that in the first row, this part of knit stitches was knitted through the back loop. Since this was a flat knitting, but all of this part was knitted through the front loop. However, starting from the second row and onward, our knit stitches will be knitted through the front loop, since we now have completely circular knitting here. So, I knitted one row. Next, I will knit the height. I need a number of centimeters. We will meet with you in the next part. I will tell you how many rows I knitted straight, and how much that turned out for me in centimeters. That is, we knit until we start to shape the heart. Wishing everyone easy stitches and goodbye for now.